All right, let's jump right into this explainer on a seriously fascinating text called How to Read a Ledger Written by Your Life. This isn't your standard self help material. It actually offers a completely different, almost mathematical framework for how we process our own existence, stepping away from those typical platitudes and moving us toward a highly structured, objective way of viewing our daily experiences. So, I want you to ask yourself honestly right now, are you seeing events or are you seeing patterns? Because let's face it, most of us just wake up, move through our daily routines, navigate our relationships, and feel this massive whirlwind of emotions in response to whatever gets thrown at us. We're essentially operating in a default state of reaction, right? We get a flat tire and boom, it's a bad day. We get a promotion and it's a good day. But we do all of this without ever actually seeing the deeper architecture beneath it all. We are so incredibly zoomed in on the daily grind, just obsessing over isolated incidents, that we entirely miss the broader interconnected patterns that are actually shaping our trajectory.
Which brings us to Section 1, the unseen patterns and the illusion of everyday life.
Usually, we're just out here seeing isolated events and getting completely overwhelmed by our raw emotions. We really only notice detours when things go wrong and interrupt our carefully laid plans. But the text urges us to look deeper and totally shift that perspective. It challenges us to see patterns instead of random events, to look for an underlying balance instead of just getting swept away by unfiltered emotion, and ultimately to see destiny instead of just frustrating detours. It's a massive shift from passively reacting to the chaos of life to actively recognizing an overarching framework that's driven by synchronicity and polarity. Okay, moving on to Section 2, a ledger of balance. Life is actually speaking to you. Now, when you hear the word ledger, you probably picture, a dusty accounting book, or maybe a tally of right and wrong, morality and judgment, because that's how we typically judge ourselves, constantly keeping score of our mistakes versus our victories. But a ledger of life, at least as described in this framework, is something entirely different. It is a ledger of pure balance, symmetry, and truth. It completely strips away the human tendency to label things as good or bad, and instead measures our experiences purely in terms of equilibrium. It's this incredibly liberating, entirely judgment-free way of evaluating your life. And here is the absolute golden rule of this whole text. Nothing in life is one-sided. Nothing. Every single experience you have ever had contains its exact opposite hidden right there within it. A devastating heartbreak, a sudden financial crisis, a profound loss, or even a soaring success. Literally, none of these exist in a vacuum. The framework suggests that if you just look closely enough, the universe always balances the scales. The absolute worst thing that ever happened to you contains a hidden gift. And conversely, your biggest wins always come with hidden costs. So how do we actually use this? Well, it's called the ledger method. Let's break it down really simply. Imagine you're carrying around some heavy resentment about a past failure. That memory carries a massive emotional charge. It makes you angry or sad the second you think about it. The ledger method is the active process of finding the exact opposite of that perceived negative. What specific skills did that failure force you to learn? Who did you meet because of it? By forcing your brain to see both sides of the experience equally, that heavy emotional charge actually collapses. You neutralize the intense feeling. You aren't suppressing your emotions, you're balancing them. And when that emotion neutralizes, true clarity emerges. The text describes this balanced state as aligning with the Tao, which is basically just the natural, underlying flow and order of the universe. Let's look at how this builds in Section 3, the three movements, structuring your transformation. The source material maps out this shift in perspective through three ascending movements. Step 1 is the human ledger. This is our baseline, where we just learn to observe our subjective, messy human story and recognize that we are caught up in universal patterns. Then we level up to Step 2, the dragon's ledger. Here, the text introduces the teachings of a guide named Zoran, and it focuses heavily on doing the actual work, using the ledger method to collapse polarity and neutralize our biases. And finally, Step 3 is the cosmic ledger. This is the ultimate goal, a state referred to as awakening dragon sight. In this stage, you're no longer fighting the events of your life, you're just breathing in harmony with the Tao, seeing the perfect balance in everything exactly as it happens. And there's this incredibly powerful quote here I want to highlight. The dragon is not a character, he is a mirror. When reading about this guide Zoran, or the whole mythological concept of the dragon, you have to understand it isn't pointing outward to some mystical guru. It is a profound psychological reflection of your own inner self. The ultimate guide, the one holding the actual wisdom to balance your ledger, is you, once you look at yourself with complete, unfiltered honesty. That takes us right into section 4, reading your life, the experiential practice. You have to read your life with very specific, mindful intentions. You've got to do it slowly, resisting the urge to jump to quick conclusions. You do it curiously and honestly, and absolutely courageously, because let me tell you, it takes immense bravery to look at your darkest moments and search for the hidden benefit, or to look at your brightest moments and acknowledge the hidden cost. You engage with this practice with steady breath, openness, and a genuine, deeply felt willingness to see the unseen architecture of your experiences. And listen, this requires actual physical action. The author explicitly tells you to keep a ledger beside you, a notebook, a journal, even just a blank page. You aren't meant to be a passive observer just nodding along to a theory. You are an active participant here. The practice requires you to physically write out the events of your life, draw a literal line down the middle of the page, and actively list the balancing factors until the emotional weight of those events starts to lift. So why is the physical act so absolutely critical? Because you cannot simply think your way out of this. Intellectual transformation, just logically understanding the concept in your head, it isn't enough. To genuinely alter your perspective, the transformation has to be experiential, emotional, and energetic. You have to physically write it out and feel the shift in your body. When the emotional charge of a past trauma or anxiety finally collapses, you literally feel an energetic release. That physical, bodily experience is what actually anchors the new perspective. Which leads us to the ultimate payoff in Section 5, your cosmic destiny, the awakening. Once you successfully apply this ledger method, everything begins to reframe itself. Like, you realize that your deepest, most terrifying crises were actually necessary course corrections. Think about a time you lost a job or a huge opportunity. In the moment, the human ledger records it as an absolute disaster. But viewed through the cosmic ledger, you were just veering too far away from your true potential. The crisis was simply the mechanism the universe used to force you back onto the right path. You also begin to see that those brutal, shattering heartbreaks, they were actually openings. We often view the end of a relationship as this permanent breaking of our spirit, but the ledger reveals that this immense pain actually shatters the ego, breaking you open to allow for new empathy, deeper self-reliance, and eventually connections that actually align with who you are becoming. The pain wasn't a punishment, it was a doorway. And those incredibly frustrating detours where you felt totally off track, that was your destiny. Society gives us this very rigid timeline for success. And when we take a detour, maybe a failed project, a gap year, a period where we just feel lost, we feel like we're falling behind. But this framework shows that those detours provided the exact specific skills you needed to fulfill your actual purpose. The detour wasn't a distraction from the path, it literally was the path. And the best part? Your timing was absolutely perfect all along. When you align with the rhythm of the Tao, that constant, exhausting anxiety of wasting time just dissolves. You recognize that the interconnected web of events required you to be exactly where you were, precisely when you were there. Nothing in your life happened a single moment too early or a single second too late. Seriously, let this sink in and collapse any of that lingering self-judgment or societal pressure you might be holding on to right now. You are not lost, you are not broken, you are not behind, and you are definitely not late. The human ledger deals in those false labels, but the cosmic ledger proves them mathematically incorrect. You have always been perfectly balanced within the equation of your own life. You are simply becoming. Every single event, every emotion, and every hidden pattern you uncover is a necessary, perfectly calculated part of an ongoing process. You are continually shedding the illusions of the human ledger and stepping closer and closer to clarity. Now, as this source text states pretty seriously here, this information wasn't meant to just entertain you. It is meant to awaken you. It's designed to give you the practical tools to meet that inner mirror, the dragon within you, with absolute clarity and to finally adopt a truly cosmic perspective on your day-to-day life. So the real question is, are you ready to write your own ledger? The invitation is right there in front of you. Grab a blank page, start searching for the hidden symmetry in your everyday life, and step fully into your cosmic destiny. Thanks so much for hanging out and learning with me today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.